Alright, so today we're going to give you a demonstration of the rigging setter and exactly how it works. I get a lot of comments at the shows I go to about people have seen my ads in the Big Book or the Leathercrafters Journal, but it's hard to understand from a picture how it actually works, so we're going to try and clear all that up with this demonstration. The first thing I do with it is determine rig position. And I like to use the low point of the bar as my full, so all I have to do to find that is bring this up once I get the tree on the stand, and wherever this bumper contacts the bar becomes my full position. And as an aside, I also get a lot of questions about how do you actually determine the rig positions. And I can quickly go through that. There's the American Saddle Makers Association has actually done a pretty intense study about all of that. But the easiest way and the quickest way to describe it is you think of a line from your full position to the corner of your seat, and then you just bisect that line. So if I cut that line in half, I get center fire. If I cut that line in half, I get 3/4. If I cut that line in half, I get 5/8 and 7/8. So these dimensions here will change based on the size of your tree. So a 14-inch seat, these dimensions will be closer together, and a 17-inch seat, they'll spread out a little bit, but that's the easiest way to describe that. Okay, so I find out where my full is, and then I decide from that where I'm going to set my rigs. So when I decide, this one is going to be just a little bit off of full, because I don't want to come in front of full with my D-ring, because that tends to give you a tipping motion when you cinch down. So I just make a vertical mark down through where I'm going to center my D-ring. Then I measure down 5.5, which is the measurement I like to use, and that's arbitrary. Whatever measurement you use, just make a horizontal mark for your D-ring. Once you get those reference marks on there, just start a couple of tacks in your D-ring and line it up on your marks and tack it down. Then all you have to do is flop that to the other side. I'm going to turn this around. I've got one set here already. So I take my first ring after it's set, bring this up and contact the bar and trace around it. Then all you have to do is flop this to the off side. Start a couple of tacks in your offside ring. Set that in your tracing. Contact the bar. Set that in your tracing. Tack that down. And you've got an exact mirror image from side to side. You don't have to do any measuring or fiddling around, taking it on and off the stand. It's a pretty much done deal. You can do 4 D-rings in about 15 minutes, and then all you have to do is run back through with your screws. If you like plate rigs, it'll work with a plate rig too. You just set your first plate on your tree, tack it down, bring this up, bump the bar, trace the bottom contour in the cutout. You just have to trace here and in this cutout, flop that to the off side, bring it up, set that in your tracing, and you're good to go. You can do a plate rig in about 5 minutes. I've had guys ask me if you can do in-skirt rigs, and for a long time I thought you couldn't, because you have to contact the tree with this bumper in order to have your mirror image from side to side and be in the exact same place from side to side. But I had a friend, a saddle maker in the Colorado Saddle Makers Association, say, well, all you have to do, you can do it with in-skirts, you just have to set your rigging before you assemble your skirts. So if you consider this the top piece of your in-skirt, you would just set it on there and hold it in place with your awls. Make two registration holes in the front and 2 registration holes in the back, and then trace around it. Take your offside piece and set it in your tracing and make 4 registration holes on that side. Then you can assemble your skirts and go back through, and all you have to do is, when your skirts are assembled, is match up your registration holes. So it will work with an in-skirt. So I was missing a whole group of folks that do in-skirts. I'm figuring the time you save in your shop by doing it with this tool, you can pay for the tool in about 4 to 5 saddles. And so that kind of is the demonstration. Now I'll show you how this thing comes. It comes with a bench mount, so you can actually lag this to your bench, and this top part just slips down in here. You tighten it, and then you have access all the way around the stand when you're working on it. And a lot of guys are actually mounting this on the wall at working height, then they have an extra stand in their shop when they're not setting riggings. This back hold down bumps up against the cantle, so that if you're doing multiple trees, like a bunch of trophy saddles, you can get them all alike without having to retrace every one. You just slip their next tree into this back hold down and you're good to go. I use this soft rope. Now you'll probably have your horn wrapped, so I would use a piece of shearling as a padding here so you don't scar up your leather. But you'll notice this tree, when the bumper hits, there's about 1.25 inch difference here. And that's because you want this tree sitting on the stand looking the same way it's going to look when you get your tree sitting on a horse. You'll notice I've got this back bracket hold down here built up with strips of leather. So when you get your rigging setter, you'll want to pad the front and the back, but you want the back built up higher so you get that 1.25 inch. I've also got this back hold down padded with leather. Not only does that protect the back of the seat, but it also allows this wing nut to turn freely. And that's pretty much it. Another question I get is, what do I write on this polycarb with? Normally, I just use a dry erase marker because that cleans up a lot easier. You just swipe of the rag and it wipes right off. But for the shows, or if you're doing multiple saddles, I use a China marker or grease pencil, and that stays on a little better. But you have to use like vinegar and water to get that off. And I wipe it off with a microfiber cloth, but a soft cotton cloth will work just as well. You don't want to use a paper towel or something that's going to scratch. This is a little harder than plexiglass, but it will still scratch. So for that reason, I use a microfiber cloth.